Thank you all for being here and welcome to Streamline Year-End Close with QuickBooks Online, which I'll be referring to as a QBO, and QuickBooks Online Accountant, which I'll be referring to as QBOA. So just wanted to make sure we mentioned that from the very beginning. And the goal for this webinar is to transform your year-end process to be stress-free, to be streamlined, and to elevate your firm. So not only are we going to cover the year-end process, which is super important, but then we're going to talk about how we can leverage technology to streamline that for your firm. And then when you're more streamlined, you can work more efficiently year-round with your clients. Of course, that reduces errors, that creates more productivity and efficiencies, and ultimately it implements a better and stronger and more productive way to work with your clients. So we're going to go hyper-focused into year end, and then we're going to leverage technology to streamline those processes. So what does that include? It includes us covering first the full small business accounting workflow, because to go ahead and do year end, you have been supporting your clients year round. So let's make sure that's the case. Then we're going to cover one of the frameworks I have designed specifically to teach the accounting, bookkeeping, and tax community, and that is the end-to-end accounting lifecycle, which is an essential stage to actually get to the year-end readiness stage. Then we'll talk about year-end readiness. Then we're going to cover what I call my secret weapon as a financial and tax accountant that did both the accounting and the tax preparation for my small business clients, and that's the Books to Taxes year-end work paper. Then we're going to bring in QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Online Accountant to streamline these processes. So I am going to open up QBO and QBOA because I've had a lot of people say, okay, it's helpful to have screenshots, but can we get in there? So of course, if time allows, we're going to get into the software and show you some of these streamlined features and processes. And then we're going to wrap it up. So let's go ahead and get to it. So let's go ahead and move forward. And let's start with the small business accounting workflow. So what is the small business accounting workflow? The small business accounting workflow was born to bridge the gap between bookkeeping and taxes. So when I came from a public accounting background and then into a private accounting background and then opening my own practice, I realized there is a gap between bookkeeping and accounting and taxes. But ultimately, the entire workflow to take a client from books to taxes has to be completed to even reach year end and be ready for year end. So the small business accounting workflow was born to bridge this gap and provide a simple framework that speaks both universal language, which is accounting, and also the language of business that small business could understand. So the small business accounting workflow, as I mentioned, is a simple, and it's on purpose, a simple 3-step process, AKA a workflow that guides a business on how to go from their books to taxes. So you're going to hear me quite a bit refer to tax-ready books. Tax-ready books are books that essentially are tax-ready and finance-ready year-round. And it doesn't matter that we know we have to do taxes at different times of the year. We need to stay compliant throughout the year. And then we have our big tax deadlines at the end of the year or early in the following year. But your books can be ready year-round. And they should be, especially if your clients are looking to get financing or other growth strategies. So the concept here is, how do you get your clients' books to be tax ready? Well, we get them to be tax ready by following a very specific path. And I always say this path is essential for year-end readiness because, again, we're focusing on year-end readiness. But tax-ready books are these rock-solid financial statements that you know, as an accounting partner, have completed the full accounting journey. They have had the real-time bookkeeping. They have the accurate financial accounting and year-round review that you've been doing as an accounting partner. And you do all this, why? So that way you and your business owner, your business client, could sit down and actually start having the conversations that matter, the financial conversations that count. But those conversations cannot be had unless your books are rock solid financial statements. So this path from A to C, from bookkeeping to accounting to the conversations that count, will lead you to the next step, which is knowing that those financial documents, data, and information are ready to start closing the books. They're ready for the year-end readiness process. And this journey always starts with the accounting partner and the business or business owner or business manager choosing who is going to be doing what. Who is going to be doing what in this process so we can accurately and seamlessly complete the workflow. So, what is the workflow? The workflow is super simple. You complete all of the accounting tasks, you prepare the financial statements, and then you report this information on the taxes. And then visually, what that looks like, again, you complete all your accounting tasks, which essentially to me means that you are learning and completing all the essential accounting tasks connected with the fundamental accounting principles to close your client's books, not only on an annual basis, but possibly on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, and of course, as well on an annual basis. When I realized that there's a lot involved in that process of completing all of the accounting tasks, especially based on the type of business and industry, that's when I went ahead and designed what's called the end-to-end accounting life cycle. And I'll share that with you in a moment. But as long as you are sure that the accounting tasks are being completed, then here is the magical part. Truly, accurate financial reports are being populated. And the power is that they're being populated automated in an automated process because you're hopefully using an accounting software to be doing all of this work in the background. So completing accounting tasks essentially means you're also preparing tax-ready books, which means you will be ready for the third stage, which is that financial data, those financial documents, that financial information needs to seamlessly move on to the tax forms. But you can feel confident about that year round because you're completing this workflow. And that's how you move a business from books to taxes. So let's take a deeper look for a moment on those essential steps, because as this is a specific accountant, bookkeeper, and tax professional webinar, this possibly isn't something I'd go deeper with the business owner, but I want to make sure you're aware of the different steps that are happening in each one of those stages. And I also want you to participate in this because this is something that I actually do in a workshop, and it's a very in-depth workshop, but we're going to do this really quickly together. So let's go ahead and cover the end-to-end accounting life cycle. The end-to-end accounting life cycle helps you guide the business owner as an accounting partner to learn and complete all of the required tasks. Now, again, when we say required tasks, it's based on the business, it's based on their industry, it's based on one another's roles in doing these tasks. But ultimately, if you know accounting principles and if you know overall tasks that happen in each stage, then you will be completing tax-ready books year-round. So, what is the accounting life cycle? It's the full business life cycle that takes you from managing the books, balancing those books, maintaining those books year round, and then closing the books. Why? Because we want to create, build, and maintain tax-ready books year round. So let's review each stage and its specific goal. Manage the books. This is the first stage. We need to join the conversation with our clients. We need to get them on the same page and say, we can't move forward with your accounting if we can't manage your books, manage them daily, weekly, at the minimum quarterly. And this is what we need to do during the manage the books. So these are things to kind of think about. When you're managing the books, again, usually it's a weekly or monthly task or overall stage with several tasks involved. But essentially, you're obtaining all of the financial data, you're organizing this data, you're recording this data. Once everything is in the books, and hopefully, again, you're using an accounting software to do this faster and smarter and with more automated processes, you need to go back and look at all this information, usually on a monthly basis, verify everything's there, and then maybe do some updates based on additional information received for that time period. Again, we're going to use the example that this is getting managed on a monthly basis. Then we go ahead and need to balance all this information. So even though we've managed the data all month long, right? And we've been doing these accounting tasks all month long, so it's not so overwhelming at the end of the month, there is still a very essential step that has to be done at the end of the month, and we need to balance it all out. right? We need to balance everything. And the balance for accounting is usually the reconciliation process. So we start reconciling all of those balance sheet accounts. We start validating that we haven't missed anything when we are managing the books throughout the month. Now we start looking at those reports and making sure that everything that was posted on the general ledger is moving on to those financial reports. We do a review of these numbers, and then we may have to revise some of this information before it moves over to the business. So all of that is happening in the balance stage. So at this point, we're managing all month long, and then we're balancing at the end of the month. So what is the goal? Why are we doing all of this? We're doing this because after we have completed the manage and the balance stage, after we've reached stages 1 and 2, we have accurate financial statements. How exciting is that? Like, you can really trust that you have accurate financial statements if you are doing all of these tasks. You can also trust that by stage 2, the small business will have their real-time accurate information. They'll have real-time accurate financial statements. And I emphasize real time, because that is one of the biggest issues that businesses have, is that they never get their information in real time when they can actually make decisions. So they want that information so they can sit down with their accounting partner and make educated and informed decisions. They want to have those conversations, but they can't have those conversations if they don't see the numbers, if they can't see it or even touch it. Maybe they want you to send the forms, the statements, so they can actually look at it themselves first and then sit down and have those conversations. That's what they want to be feeling and doing by stage 2. And then comes stage 3, when you're just maintaining that well-oiled machine, when you're making sure the finances on a monthly or quarterly basis are compliant, when you're making those payments, those compliant payments, those tax payments. You may be providing quarterly projections or deeper financial analysis. And of course, this is when you can start doing some really good key performance indicators and metrics for the business. So for stage 3, the goal is to provide a deeper financial analysis. You're keeping them year-round compliant. You're building that relationship with them, and you're really able to go deeper into the finances, which is really what most accounting partners want to do with their clients. And then ultimately, what are you doing? You need to close all this up. You need to close this at the end of the period, or of course at the end of the year. And so what you're really doing is you're just crossing T's and dotting I's, right? You're just making sure that the business is fully compliant, both on the accounting side and on the tax side. And that's when you know that they have readiness. That's when you know reconciliations have been done, deeper reviews have been done, the books are ready to be closed. They are tax ready and year-end ready. And of course, the goal for stage 4 is that the close is helping the client feel compliant. It's helping the client feel like, oh, things have been done accurately, and I feel so much stronger and more confident about the next period. Not only you as the partner, the accounting partner, but of course, as the business owner as well. And that's why completing the accounting tasks and preparing the financial statements that are happening during that end-to-end accounting life cycle are essential to be able to get to the last step, which is reporting on taxes. So that's what you do. You complete this framework. You know that by completing the framework, your financial statements are rock solid, and you know that you have a stronger start for your year-end readiness process. The year-end readiness process. So we needed to go through the full accounting workflow. We needed to dive deeper into the end-to-end accounting lifecycle, because if that is not being done, then you are not ready for the year-end readiness. That's essentially the truth, because the year-end ready means that you've been doing things year-round. Unless you got the client on December 29th, right, of that year, there's a whole lot of things that should have been done before you get to preparing the books for year-end ready and close. So that was the reason why we had to go through that. But now let's cover year-end ready. So the year-end readiness process is a comprehensive year-end closing of a business's tax-ready books. That's really important from the beginning. You are now having that very comprehensive year-end closing. So when I said a moment ago, it's just dotting I's and crossing T's. Yeah, but you're really creating a process for that. So that way, you know, I can really feel confident that my clients are ready to do what? They're ready to verify that all transactions have been accounted for. Nothing is missing. It's super important, right? Because when you close the year, of course, there's an opportunity to have to do prior period adjustments. It's not the end of the world. It happens, but we rather not have to amend returns or do prior period adjustments if we don't need to. So the verification and validation is essential. And we want to confirm that it's accurate. So many times I've had business owners, even accounting professionals say, well, everything's in there. It must be right. And I said, no. Those are two separate things. Everything being in there means you verified everything's in there. Confirming its accuracy is completely separate. So it never means that everything in there means that everything is right. Two completely separate tasks that you have to do there, right? Really projects. Verification is one. Validation, confirming accuracy is another. And so that's very important to understand and have a process for that. But let's go back a moment to say that you have been doing the end-to-end accounting life cycle and you have been preparing tax ready books year round. Then guess what, my friends? You can feel pretty comfortable that you're pretty close that everything is accurate because you've been doing this on a monthly basis. And then last, prepare a business's financial data and documentation. So now when you get to the year-end readiness, specifically for preparing taxes or preparing books for taxes, even if you don't do taxes, because this is where I usually get my peers are like, but Mary, I don't do taxes. This doesn't apply to me. And I would have to just kindly argue and say, or push back in a loving way and say, it doesn't matter if you do taxes. You still want to prepare the books, data and documentation in preparation of tax and business compliance because you're their partner. You're their bookkeeping partner or you're their accounting partner. It doesn't matter if you're not their specific tax professional. And so that's why it's so important to understand that the year-end readiness process assumes that you have been helping this business owner with accurate financial statements year round. And now you're just really wanting to make sure that they're super ready and that everything has been put together and organized for that year-end readiness process. Okay. But one thing I want to mention right now, because let's go ahead and get real. Let's get like super real. That is a big assumption that all accounting partners serving business owners are doing all of this work year round. It's a very big assumption. And I've learned that not only with my own practice, based on when I would get a client and how quickly I can catch them up and go ahead and get them current in real time. But more importantly, as I teach accounting partners, now I'm really seeing the behind the scenes on where they're at with their clients' data. So what if this assumption is not correct? So yes, there are times when a business comes in, they start working with an accounting professional and they have months, maybe years worth of data not completed. And so I share this image here because you need to grab a whole team. You, the business owner, let's say the bookkeeper, the accounting partner or professional, a CPA, and then maybe the tax professional, an EA, you all need to jump on that train together. You all need to do the marathon together, right? Because you're needing to catch up. And so many times when you're doing, let's say, year-round accounting, that looks very different than catch-up accounting. Because catch-up accounting is you're needing to recreate an entire year of bookkeeping, do some quick financial analysis, and then get those books all ready for taxes all at the end of the year, or let's say at the beginning of the year, because this client decided to come to you in January or February and they want their taxes done before the deadline. So I just want to make sure you all are aware. Don't feel bad if that's happening. It's very common to have to do this catch up work. And that again is kind of the idea of having to do this full year-end readiness all at once, including having to do the bookkeeping, the accounting, and then start creating that relationship with your clients. So if it's not exactly perfect, if you're not covering all of the steps, that's okay, because it depends on how you started working with that client. But ultimately, these are just goals to get to in regards to getting and creating tax-ready books. So let's explore. Again, let's go into, kind of a future reality that we have been working with our clients year round. And this is really the opportunity to just tighten up our processes, to tighten everything up. And how do we do that? Can we go ahead and break it down into something that's simpler? And I go ahead and break it down into two key stages. The first one, I like to call it, is stage one. It's the full deep accounting review, or I like to call it audit proofing. I hear someone, I like people say it's audit ready or audit proofed. Now, I come from a public accounting background, so I was an auditor. So, that kind of auditor comes in me when I'm working on this stage, because I really want to tick everything off. I want to have work papers, I want to have references, I want to have source documents for everything. So that way I can have peace of mind, and so can my clients. So there's some things that includes. These are just a few things it includes. First, the account reconciliations, of course. And I'm sure everyone that watches this session knows we need to start at the balance sheet, because that's where the accounts are. I'm not referring to the full chart of accounts. I'm referring to accounts that have a balance at the end of the year. And so we need to go to that balance sheet, and we need to look at our assets, and we need to look at our liabilities, and we need to make sure every single one of those accounts have been reconciled. We want to do a detailed line-by-line review of the balance sheet and the profit and loss. We want to drill down into some of those more complex P&L accounts, let's say wages, let's say contractors' fees, or other maybe cost of goods sold or revenue accounts. We want to drill down and do a deeper review of those. We may have to do special reconciliations. I always say the special reconciliations that are a no-brainer that you always have to do on the P&L are your sales taxes, are your payroll taxes, are your independent contractors with 1099s. Those are special reconciliations. Those are not the ones that people think about right away and they say, oh, I understand reconciliation. You're talking about a bank reconciliation. No, this is a specialized reconciliation for a special type of an account. And you may have a special account also on your balance sheet, maybe a petty cash account or some other clearing account that needs to be reconciled, because that is a special type of account that your client has on their books. And then ultimately you build out what's called the books to taxes year-end work paper. Now on the stage 2 side, and we're not going to go too deep into this, but this is something that you want to become aware of when you're going to assist, or if you choose to assist to help your clients prepare their books for compliance, closing the books, and of course for taxes. For example, you want them to know the ordinary and necessary rule in regards to expenses. You want them to know which IRS forms they are required to file. You want them to know the difference between common versus not so common. You want to know the type of taxes that apply to their business. Right? Not every business will need to have a sales tax reconciliation, for example. You want to know what type of business tax form that they need to file. Of course, that's something you would have gotten from the very beginning when you started serving that client. You would have had them complete what's called an accounting profile, which would have notified you what type of business entity they are. And then, of course, you want to be able to see the numbers on the financials and say, hey, guess what? These will eventually end up on these tax forms. And if all of this is getting done, again, in a perfect world, you can close and protect the books and then create a process around this so you can streamline and automate this for all of your clients. Now, again, those 2 stages, to keep it simpler for you and to have something to take home with you, I went ahead and created it for you in a checklist format so you can go ahead and look at those on your own and even use this for your year-end readiness process for your clients. So the books to taxes work paper. Okay, my friends, I get really excited when I talk about the books to taxes work paper, and here's why. Because if you are doing all this work, then you want to prove that you've been doing all of this work year round. You want to prove to yourself and to your clients, here is evidence that I've been doing all of this work, and I want to have one source document, one safe place for us to have a conversation of everything that happened this year. So I'm going to show you what I've created for my clients for over 20 years. Every single business owner, whether or not I do their taxes, every single business owner would have a work paper in their files at the end of the year. Now, if I did their taxes, it was critical to have a work paper, because this is how I'd move their numbers onto their tax return. So let me quickly go through this process with you. Again, this is a whole workshop I could teach and that I do, but I'm going to do it quickly for you so you can understand the process. So remember, in stage 1, audit proofing, one of the last items I wrote there was the books to taxes year-end work paper. You may have kind of just glossed over that and said, what is she talking about? The books to taxes year-end work paper. Let me go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. But before I do, let me just explain to you the idea here. The idea here again is that you are guiding your business as the accounting partner to really now focus on two key financial statements, which are the balance sheet and the profit and loss. We just covered why you start with the balance sheet because it's essential to go to the balance sheet, but also the profit and loss. But you want to have one safe place where you can both together as a collaborative relationship to have those deeper conversations and to validate, verify, and also give each other comments back and forth on what you're both seeing and actually agreeing to. Seeing and agreeing. That's very important because if you're doing this alongside your clients, which I always had back in the day, let's say 6, 7 years ago, I used to do this in front of them, meaning they were in my office. Now I still do it in front of them, but through a virtual Zoom session, but they still see me going line by line and I can look at their face. And if they seem confused or if they're not agreeing with what I'm saying, then that's my cue to say, hey, let's make a note real quick here because we're not aligned. Something is off. Okay, so that's the overall concept here. And the last thing I want to share really what is a work paper. So work paper or working papers as defined in the accounting industry, this is a kind of an overall definition in the accounting industry, is that work papers are detailed records and or supporting documents commonly used by accountants and auditors to substantiate the financial information on a company's financial statements. So to keep it simple, I call it kind of your organized audit trail. It's your organized audit trail is your work paper or are your work papers. And of course, are saved in a secure online storage or organized hierarchy where you save all the files for your clients. But a work paper is also the evidence. Remember I shared with you a moment? It's the evidence that you have completed the tasks, that the calculations have been made and agreed upon, and conclusions have been reached by you, the accounting partner, and by the business owner. And so now it's like, hey, look at that work paper. We actually made a decision on that work paper. So that's why work papers are super important. Now, one kind of like truth, let me just get it out there. Many people will say, well, I don't consider myself an accountant or I don't consider myself an auditor. So why would I use a work paper? Bookkeepers should use work papers too, because in today's world, in today's tech forward and more financial literate world where the bookkeepers are taking on these tasks, they absolutely should be implementing work papers into their processes as well. Okay, so there's three key areas to the work paper. The first key area is going to be the financials area. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab that balance sheet and grab that profit and loss, and you're going to export it into a software like Excel or Google spreadsheets. And you're going to have both the balance sheet and the profit and loss in one place. Then you're going to make sure that you are notating the conversation. So as you can see there, I always have a column that said reviewed. And every time I go through each line of both the balance sheet and the P&L, I go ahead and check that off. I also have an area for my request for the client, and I have an area for the responses from the client. And then lastly, and this is what I believe is the most important, and it's where my audit nerdiness comes in. I want to have a work paper reference for every single line on this work paper. So for example, checking number 1 is Bank of America checking. And if I go into my cloud storage, let's say it's Google Drive, I'm going to see a file that says balance sheet dash item number 1. So it's basically the proof that at the end of the year, that business owner had $1,201 in their bank account because it's going to be their December 31st, in this case, 2024 bank statement. So again, there's no confusion here. We're all in agreement that that's basically what they had in their bank as of that date because I have a work paper reference to prove it. So as you can see, it's 4 steps. You export from the software. You add your notes and checks marks as you're validating alongside your client. And yes, it's a great conversation to have with your client. You're adding those work paper references as the source of truth. That's, again, where the auditing comes in, but everybody can do this. And then lastly, you're making sure that those work paper references match what's inside of their cloud storage. So example I gave you earlier, balance sheet dash item number 1 is balance sheet dash item number 1. It's the final bank statement for the year. And I'm not kidding. That's literally how I name my files. They will easily match. And the reason is if you name them like that, they're searchable. And they're easier for you to search for that specific document if you're looking for it in the future. Okay, so guess what, my friends? That is all, again, the processes that we can do at year end. But what if we can bring in QuickBooks Online to make this faster and to streamline this for our firm and, of course, for our clients as well? So let's go ahead and leverage technology to streamline these processes for our clients. So let's go ahead and streamline everything that we've learned so far: the small business accounting workflow, the end-to-end accounting lifecycle, the year-end readiness process. What kind of tools are inside of QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Online Accountant to streamline these processes for us? We're just going to focus on a few because there's so many. And so we're just going to focus on a few. And again, let's bring in stage one. Remember stage one, audit proofing? We talked about the account reconciliations and going through the balance sheet and all the accounts that can be reconciled. We talked about the importance of going and doing a line-by-line review of each financial statement. We talked about drilling down into the different accounts, and I gave you the example of drilling down into a P&L account, and then also creating some special account reconciliations. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like using QuickBooks Online's cool feature called the Books Review in QuickBooks Online. Now, one thing I want to mention, especially when I start going into the software, is that, of course, there's a lot more in-depth training that you'll want to do, right, when you're going into any software. In this example, we're using QuickBooks as an example, but I'm going to give you the overall power of the feature and just some quick tricks on how to get in and start using it. So as I share here, if you use the books review or choose to use the books review, your period end and your year end process can be more streamlined for your firm. So what does that look like? Well, let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So I need more time. Don't kick me out. Oh my goodness. It almost wanted to kick me out. And that's so strange because I always have it where it doesn't kick me out at all. So let me just double check and make sure that it was not going to kick me out anytime soon. Oh, that is so funny. That changed. It's always 3 hours. Okay. Let's save that baby here. Okay. And I am done. Okay, here we go. So we are in a demo environment. So all of my environments are demo environments. So no need to ask me questions about the numbers because these are all just practice environments so I can teach you. Okay, so this is a consulting business and I'm going to go into the feature called Books Review. Again, when you're in QuickBooks Online, you're always going to the left navigation and you're clicking on Books Review. So the Books Review feature in QuickBooks Online is your opportunity to do that deeper review. Remember, we were talking about completing accounting tasks and then preparing financial reports. Well, the book review is your opportunity to make sure that you review everything you did at the end of the month or at a cleanup if you're trying to do a whole cleanup for an entire year. So one or the other, either at the end of the month or for an entire cleanup period. Okay, but we're going to focus on the end of the month. And let's say, for example, you come into transaction review, but it's basically saying is you have to go ahead and start looking at the different transactions that came into your bank account for whatever reason. So the book review process or the book review feature, it's that QuickBooks is going to kind of bring things up to your attention. That's why it says this needs your attention. We found a few things. Right? And so if you've been doing this work all week long and all the way up to the end of the month, then QuickBooks Online is going to try to find some things that you may need to pay attention to. For example, when it comes to QuickBooks Online, it doesn't like when something is not categorized, which is absolutely correct, right? You don't want to have a transaction that has no category, that has no account related to it. It also doesn't like it when you have transactions that have no payees, meaning you put something in QuickBooks Online, but you didn't say who you paid. That's a big issue, especially if one of those people you paid is a contractor that's going to need a 1099 at the end of the year. Big issue, right? And so basically what this transaction review tab is doing here in the Books Review Center. So here on the left, QuickBooks Online calls these centers or areas, and then these are the different tabs. So in the transaction review tab, it's trying to give you a heads up on things to look at the end of the month. Again, streamlining that month end or period end process. Now, what about account reconciliations? Remember I mentioned that you need to start on your balance sheet, everyone? Well, QuickBooks Online knows that too. So that's why when it says, go ahead and look at all your accounts, look at the accounts they're bringing up. they're bringing up balance sheet accounts because it's saying, hey, go and look at all of your bank accounts, go and look at all your credit card accounts, look at other accounts that you may want to reconcile. It's focusing on the balance sheet. Thank you that it's doing that, because it's teaching all accounting professionals we need to stop only focusing on the profit and loss. We need to focus on the balance sheet, because that's where the accounts are living, right? That's where they live. And so that's where we're focusing on the account reconciliations. Okay, one thing I also want to mention here is that if you go on the bottom of any of these tabs, this is where you can go ahead and create more items. So let's say you tell me, Mariette, well, one of the accounts that I want to do a special reconciliation on, it's actually not in here. I can't find it. No big deal, my friends. What you can do is you can create that additional step right in here. So for example, if you have an ADP summary report that you want to reconcile on a monthly basis for all your clients to make sure that wages and all payroll related items are reconciled every month, so that way at the end of the year, it's a clean reconciliation when you're comparing the year end numbers, which I know was huge for me when I had clients that had over millions of dollars in compensation, basically in payroll. I needed to make sure I wouldn't reconcile every month. I actually would reconcile every period. So every pay period, whether it was weekly or biweekly, I would reconcile every pay period. So that way I knew that at the end of the year, even if I had a discrepancy, it wouldn't be that big. So you can add an additional item here on something that you want to remember to do, or that you want your team to do. So this is not necessarily you. Maybe you're not just a solopreneur. Maybe you've been building and scaling your firm. And so this could be something that your team members can do. Okay. Final review is going to give you some additional areas that QuickBooks Online believes is maybe a little bit unusual. It's going to have you look at your accounts payable. It's going to have you look at your accounts receivable, which makes perfect sense. Again, it's also going to recommend that you go ahead and you look at your balance sheet and your profit and loss. Yes, that's exactly what we just talked about, right? And not only that, it's going to give you a hyperlink to go ahead and open it up. So it's going to go ahead and tell you, hey, go ahead now and click on this link and do your reconciliations and look at your balance sheet. Go ahead and click on this link and take a look at your P&L. How cool is that? So again, we just covered these processes more from a learning perspective, but QuickBooks Online in this books review area is also teaching you those best practices right inside of this books review tool. And then lastly, this last tab, the wrap up tab, is basically saying, if you've done all of this on a monthly basis, right? Congratulations. It's time for you to do what? Prepare reports. Remember in the small business accounting workflow, it's first do all the tasks, then prepare the reports. It follows the exact same thing. First, complete all of your tasks. Make sure you validate, verify everything looks good, and then wrap it up by preparing your reports. So very cool that this books review, when they went ahead and launched this, it's been several years now, but when they launched this center to really encourage accounting professionals to use accounting workflows, as long as you really understand it essentially is building out your workflow, you can use this for every single client if you don't have another process. Maybe you already have this process using another software, but if not, you can use this one. Okay. The next one I wanted to mention was the Books to Taxes year-end work paper, but guess what? I already taught you the concept of the Books to Taxes year-end work paper. Did you know that QuickBooks Online has it already in there for you? So they already have a feature called Prep for Taxes, which essentially creates the Books to Taxes work paper for you. Okay, super cool, everybody. I know that this was years ago, and I'm talking about when I used to be on the Intuit Accountant Council back in 2017 and 2018, when they were working on this, and I was working with their developers and kind of getting super excited about the fact that they were creating this feature, because I told them, I've been doing this with my clients for 10 years, and I used to export this to Excel or export this to Google Sheet, and now are you telling me that this is already in there for your your accounting professionals using QuickBooks Online Accountant? They said, yes, it's in there. They just need to learn about it and know about it. So it's there, everybody. And as the picture shows here, it is accountant only, meaning you have to be signing in as a QuickBooks Online accountant to be able to access the accountant tool called Prep for Taxes. And that's also the case for Books Review. Books Review is only available for a QuickBooks Online accountant. It's not available if the client is looking at their books. So if you use the Prep for Taxes tool in QuickBooks Online Accounting, guess what? The Books to Taxes work paper can be streamlined. So what am I talking about here? Well, guess what? You actually have a very cool tool inside of QuickBooks Online Accountant, and I'll show it to you in a moment just quickly so you can see it. It's called Prep for Taxes. It's got 5 key areas. It's got year-end tasks. It's got documents. It's got review and adjust, grouping, statements, and tax mapping. Year-end tasks is really your opportunity to build out this readiness process. You can build out your own year-end readiness process right inside of this Prep for Taxes tool. So you can create a Prep for Taxes workflow even if you don't do taxes. Again, super cool. The second documents area is where you can align the document management system with your own. So you may already be using, let's say, a Google Drive or a OneDrive, but you can use this. You can use this to align it with your process, right? You can align it with your process. And also what I love about this for people that have never created a file hierarchy, and if you've ever taken any of my classes, I am obsessed with the file hierarchy, which is how you set up your files for yourself and your clients. This is teaching you the concept of how you can build out folders. The review and adjust is essentially what used to be called the trial balance. So the original tool that they made many, many years ago, probably over 10 years ago, was basically just the trial balance feature, but they've really evolved it beautifully. But essentially, this is the concept of being able to see your entire trial balance, your balance sheet accounts, and your profit and loss accounts all in one place. Why? So you can run a report, you can make adjustments, add notes, add comments, and eventually export it into your Books to Taxes work paper. Grouping and statements is a way to group specific accounts, and tax mapping is the area that maps everything you have in QuickBooks Online to the transferable forms in Intuit's tax software. So Intuit's online professional tax software is called Intuit ProConnect Tax Online, and that's what the tax mapping is used for. And so that's why I'm showing here. You basically prep for taxes, you map the accounts, and then boom, you transfer it all into a tax return. Very cool. It's actually what I did for years because the tax professional software I used was Intuit ProConnect Tax Online. And so I just proved it to you, right, friends? You can go ahead and use this accountant tool. You can go ahead and use the review and adjust area. You can export it all into Excel, and it essentially creates the same Books to Taxes work paper that I went ahead and shared with you. Now, I want to be very honest because I like to be very honest and transparent. Is it as pretty as the one I showed you that I do? Not really, because there's a lot of stuff on there that sometimes I have to go ahead and clean up and remove. So I personally, Mariette Martinez, still personally love to export the P&L, export the balance sheet, put it into one workbook on Google Sheets and create it for myself. But I just want to let you know you do have an option if you want using the QuickBooks Online Accountant tool. For more details on using the QuickBooks Online Accountant tool and other features that I've shared, you can go to my website. I have tons of videos for accountants under my new playlist called QuickBooks Ledger, and I also share about all the tools in there. The last thing I'm just going to mention, I can't share it with you today because of time, but they also have another feature in QuickBooks Online called the Taxes Center, which is another really cool area to go ahead and explore, which is going to help you on that side of preparing books for taxes. And I also have a video that just covers the new Taxes Center on my YouTube channel. Okay, if you have any more questions, my friends, please put it in the chat because, again, I know I covered quite a bit, but I want to make sure that I'm honoring you by answering your questions. One thing I do wanted to just do really quickly before we wrap it up is I wanted to show you how to go ahead and look at the Prep for Taxes tool. So again, here I'm in a QuickBooks Online accountant file. You can tell because it's over here on the left-hand side, it's black. If I was in a QuickBooks, just a regular QuickBooks file, it would actually be gray. And so in this QuickBooks Online accountant file, I have access to accountant only tools. Remember, very important, accountant only tools. And under the accountant only tools, I can click on Prep for Taxes. It automatically takes me to the prep for taxes tool here. And then that's when I go from left to right, as I showed you. I can click on the year-end tasks. I can click on documents and create my file hierarchy. I can click on review and adjust, and I can come in here and I can make adjustments, add notes, add links, add attachments. Of course, I can click on export and export this into Excel if I'd like. I can group up my accounts if I want to group up specific accounts on the balance sheet or on the profit and loss. And I can map up everything that I did in QuickBooks Online so I can export it into ProConnect Tax Online. All of that using the Prep for Taxes tool. Let's go ahead and recap what we covered today. So the first thing we covered, of course, was a detailed explanation of the small business accounting workflow, the 3-step accounting workflow that guides a business from books to taxes, but more importantly, a workflow that you can partner up with your clients to go ahead and get them to complete a whole year worth of accounting and then become tax ready. And we know that the first stage of this workflow, which is completing accounting tasks, is essential. And that's why it's so important to learn the full end-to-end accounting life cycle, which goes ahead and makes sure that you are completing these tasks. So that way you are tax ready and year-end ready when you start that year-end readiness process. Talking about the year-end readiness process, we covered in depth what it means to be year-end ready, the verification, the validation. We gave some examples really through that ultimate checklist that I created for you. But then we went ahead and did what? We streamlined some of those processes by bringing in QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Online Accountant to complete these books faster. So that is the key here, everyone. The reason why we leverage a tool, the reason why we take the time to choose a tool, in today's case, of course, we chose QuickBooks Online, specifically QuickBooks Ledger, and then QuickBooks Online Accountant, specifically the Prep for Taxes tool. We choose those so we can work smarter, so we can make sure that we're closing out and streamlining our processes, because we want to focus on building a proactive advisory relationship. We want to focus on working more collaboratively with our clients so that way they can win, they can thrive, they can survive, and we can have those conversations that count. Okay, my friends, as I love to close, I always love to close with a message, and this one's simple, easy, everyone. Today, we focus on accounting. We focus on covering accounting as a language of business, but also we covered the technical side of accounting, even covering the idea of work papers. And why do we want to do this? Why don't we all want to be speaking the same language? Because it empowers and educates not only ourselves as the partner of the business owner, but also it creates the confidence when we're transferring this language and this learning and these processes to our clients. Bye, everyone.